Hey everybody, Alex Miller at Capian here. I'd like to give you all an update on Robinhood's early November data breach. You might have seen me post a couple of weeks ago giving the basic facts about this breach, what was lost, etc. I'll recap real quick that Robinhood is an app that you can use to trade stocks and crypto and options and similar. It became very big during the pandemic related to meme stock dynamics around companies like AMC and GameStop. And it lost a whole bunch of user data a few weeks ago via originally a social engineering attack that allowed some cyber criminals to get further access to Robinhood's databases storing information on its customers. Just the details of how that played out is what I would like to cover today. As a preface, I did a little bit of detective work collating things across different articles to make this video. Robinhood has been a little cagey in what they've disclosed about just how things went down. So this is not an authoritative account. I'm certainly not reading this directly from a Robinhood press release. It's possible there are minor details or major details I got wrong. All right, so just what happened. As I mentioned, this was social engineering. It's very common that cyber attacks involve both a human and a computer point of contact. In this case, cyber criminals managed to convince some customer support personnel at Robinhood to do some things they shouldn't have done. So let me give a little bit of context here. If you've ever been close to customer support, it's very common that an organization will have some kind of internal tool that is connected to the app that allows customer support personnel to tweak various things to resolve issues, things like turning two-factor authentication on and off, or logging a user out, or changing what is and isn't an approved device. Robinhood had one of these internal tools. A customer support person got a phone call. I believe it had been spoofed in some way, so that it appeared to be somebody inside of Robinhood. This person supposedly calling from inside Robinhood had a really weird, complicated issue. They spent a long time on the phone with this customer support person. The customer support person eventually was persuaded to give this person access to this internal tool. Unfortunately, that person they gave access to turned out to be a cyber criminal. And then they leveraged that access to that tool to get more access to Robinhood's computer system, and this eventually led to a breach of millions of user records. So some interesting backstory here about how you get to the kind of point where this happens. It was not long ago at all that Robinhood had millions of users and no customer support whatsoever. And when they blew up during the pandemic, it was, by all accounts, kind of a rush job building out their customer support team. They went from nothing at all to 24/7 very quickly. They had a staff of a few hundred people serving millions and millions of users. About half of that was apparently outsourced. So you can see in these social engineering stories, probably the role of this customer support person was new. They had probably had limited training specific to Robinhood. They were maybe just slammed and stressed out and didn't really have the time and emotional space to think about, hey, no, this is not the right thing. A couple interesting just little details. It sounds like these cyber criminals, because they had access to this tool, could have unleashed a lot more mayhem than they did. And this comes back to my narrative I mentioned in my past video. These people are professionals who are doing this with great intention as part of some plan to get paid. So they could have just wrecked everything. They didn't do that. They chose to steal data, which I believe they're currently shopping in the darker corners of the internet. Another interesting angle is that this breach was actually only discovered because this customer support person apparently went home. They called a relative and commiserated on their day at work, and they said, hey, I had this really bizarre call. And the relative, who once again has some emotional distance from this possibly, which is important, and isn't overwhelmed getting yelled on the phone at Robinhood, said, hey, that sounds really bad. You should try to escalate this. And it turned out that was the right decision because it was a major cyber attack. So I want to recap. This was an attack by professionals operating with great intention. They had some knowledge of the lay of the land inside Robinhood. They targeted a part of Robinhood that was young and overworked and probably not very mature in its rules and practices around operations, security operations, as in customer support. And that's what allowed this cyber attack, this very human aspect is what allowed this cyber attack to occur. I'd like to talk a little bit about, do these things matter? So some of the more cynical security watchers out there often bemoan a company will have a big cyber attack and it seems to not affect the stock price anyway. It seems like nobody cares. This might not be true in this case. And the narrative I'm going to put out here is that Robinhood is getting hammered. They've lost about a quarter of their stock price since their IPO. And given the kind of vertical they're in, lots of other people are doing well. So it's not like they can blame the broader market. They're getting hammered in part because they have this reputation for sketchiness. And, you know, when I was looking for information on this data breach, I noticed a lot of other things. Robinhood is under fire because they actually make money selling order flow. Those of you know that those of you that know this funny word fiduciary, you know, like is it really right that Robinhood's kind of profiting in this way with this weird conflict of interest? There's some people in the Dogecoin community that believe that Robinhood has actually hoarded up in some way a quarter of all Dogecoin. And given the role that Robinhood played, probably making Dogecoin big, this is kind of sketchy. And then, you know, a data breach is very sketchy. This is an organization that had no customer support at all. And then the second they get customer support, they get socially engineered and they lose all your data. So there's certainly a sense in this story that a really large, old, respectable corporation can maybe shrug off a data breach. If people are already looking at you like you're a little bit too dodgy to do business with and you have a data breach, maybe it's a much, much bigger deal.